Okay, folks, I'm hoping you can all hear me. Sorry about the delay there in starting. This is Stevie Donnelly from IT Sligo. I'm one of the regional coordinators for the SEC programme on behalf of SEAI. Thanks for your patience there. We just had a little bit of difficulty with one of the presenters joining. So you're all very welcome to our webinar on smart metering. First of all, I just want to thank Dr. Orla Nixivna. She's the county mentor for Galway and Mayo, and Orla is part of the Border and West SEC programme mentor team. And obviously this webinar is happening because Orla was getting a lot of questions from her SECs about smart meters. So we had a chat about it and said, well, the best thing to do is to run a webinar and invite all of the SECs and other people who are interested. So Orla organised today's speakers as well. What we're going to do is just go through quickly the agenda. So again, yeah, thanks Orla for organising this. So as I said, I'm Stevie Donnelly with IT Sligo. I'm going to give you a quick update on what we do here at IT Sligo. Then I'll talk briefly about the Sustainable Energy Communities programme. And after I do that, I'll be introducing you to Lisa Fahy. Lisa is the Retail Markets and Smart Metering Manager in the Commission for Regulation of Utilities, or the CRU. So the CRU is Ireland's independent energy and water regulator, and they were previously known as the Commission for Energy Regulation a number of years ago. And Lisa's going to go through some of the European context and policy background, what's happening with the rollout and the timeline, and then what sort of services, smart services, will be enabled for customers when they install smart meters and when they actually go live in time. Then after that, we're going to hear from Eoghan Barrett. Eoghan is the Smart Metering Manager with ESBN Networks. And for those of you that don't know, ESBN Networks is the licensed operator of the electricity distribution system in Ireland, and they've been tasked with installing 2.3 million smart meters. Okay, Eoghan's going to talk about the programme objectives and that delivery programme. How the smart meters will interact with existing retail market processes, what a customer can expect when the ESB turns up to actually change out the meter, and then he'll talk a little bit about progress to date. We're going to have a bit of time for Q&A at the end. So the way we're going to do that is there should be a Q&A function in Teams, and if you type your question in, myself, Paul, and Orla will have a look at those questions, and we'll try and get through to as many of them as possible. And if we don't, we apologise. We'll try and get some answers to the questions sent out to the people who are sending them in. As this is a live event, it's being recorded, and we hope to make the recording and the slides available either directly to the participants now, or indeed through the SEC mailing list that Ruth and Quiva look after. Okay, so very briefly, as I said, our unit's called the Contract Research Unit. We're part of the research department here at IT Sligo. We provide dedicated outreach, research, development and innovation support to regional enterprises, communities, individuals and also the public sector. Some of the projects we work through are Enterprise Ireland through a range of R&D and innovation funding supports for companies. We work with the local enterprise offices in this region, and one particular project of note is our Lower Carbon, Lower Cost project. And this is about low carbon innovation for micro enterprises. You'll see then on your screen on the right hand side, we have a number of European projects. The Red Wolf project is about shifting electrical load using solar PV, batteries and storage heaters, and how that equipment interfaces with the electricity grid to increase the use of renewable electricity, because at the moment, if there's too much wind on the electricity network, it's curtailed or constrained. So that project is trying to, I suppose, look for a solution to that issue. Symbioma is about the circular economy and investigating new opportunities to turn waste streams into new products. And then AgroRes is about developing measures to encourage the production and use of renewable energy and electricity in the agricultural and rural sector. So we work for SEI on the SEC, the Sustainable Energy Communities programme, and IT Sligo was actually signed up to Sligo SEC, so we work very closely with Sligo SEC. Okay, so then just a little bit about the Sustainable Energy Communities programme. Most of the people probably joining this webinar are already part of an SEC or thinking about it, and then there might be other people who are interested in joining it. or just interested in smart meters. So the Sustainable Energy Communities Programme, it's useful to kind of understand the policy context about why it exists and what it's for. So just you'll see there on the left-hand side of your screen, you have the international context, going right down to the local context, and starting at the international context, we have our UNFCCC, which is the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and that works through the COP, the Conferences of the Parties, and that's where we have our UN Sustainable Development Goals. Then we cascade down to what's happening on a European level, and obviously we have EU energy directives, such as the Clean Energy Package, and now the most recent one is the European Green Deal. And from, again, European policy and directives, we come down to national targets, and Ireland has its own national climate and energy targets, which are basically set by the EU, but we do have freedom as to how we achieve those targets. So obviously you can't hit any targets if you don't have a plan. So released in July 2019 by Richard Bruton was the Climate Action Plan, and also previous to that was the Climate Action Fund, to try and kickstart a lot of projects within Ireland to try and hit some of those targets. Action 167 of that Climate Action Plan is very relevant to the SEC network. The target there, I believe, is to reach 500 SECs on the network by 2025, and you'll see we're already quite close to that number now. So Ruth and Caoimhe and the team there in SEAI might be able to take a sabbatical or take a break because they've already nearly hit the target. So from that Climate Action Plan, or the reason why the SEC programme was set up, was in answer to the Energy White Paper, which was basically charting how Ireland would transition to a low carbon energy future. So SEAI, from that, were tasked with setting up the Sustainable Energy Communities Programme, and the purpose of that programme is to engage and also enable the energy citizen. And so that's basically from start to finish, international down to local level, down to the energy citizen. So as I said there, national SEC network, there's 475 groups registered, wide variety of interests. There's a mix of islands, rural and urban. There's been a lot of new interest in joining the SEC network as part of the Renewable Electricity Support Scheme, which is known as RES. But obviously, it's, as always, SEAI is very clear that energy efficiency is the best route forward first, before renewable electricity generation is considered. So they want to see that communities are thinking about energy efficiency and organising energy efficiency projects before they would then develop full-scale community-owned renewable electricity generation. Okay, so, and just very briefly, a sustainable energy community is one in which everyone works together to develop a sustainable energy system for the benefit of the community. This is achieved by aiming as far as possible to be energy efficient, using renewable energy where feasible, and then adopting smart technology solutions. So my role and Orla's role and Paul's role as mentors for the SEC programme, we try and help communities in their SEC journey, moving through the learning, the planning and the doing phases. So this is my last slide before I pass over to Lisa. And this is SEAI have kind of charted a community pathway, and this isn't set in stone by any means. Some communities start at the do phase and then they go back to the learn phase. And some communities start at the plan phase and move on to the do stage. So in the learn phase, the idea is that an interested individual or a group in a community would start an energy community. They apply to join the SEC network, and then you would meet someone like myself, an SEC mentor, and we can tell you more about the programme and what other SECs have done. Obviously, number 4 there hasn't really happened this year because of COVID, but generally it would be about attending regional and national events. So again, I suppose you could argue that these webinars have become the new national or regional events for the moment, and hopefully next year at some stage we'll be able to have proper events where we usually meet up once a year in Athlone, and we meet up with all the different SECs for that national event. As the community then moves forward into the plan stage, number 5 there, they would, as a community, set out the goals and ambitions for the community. They apply for Energy Master Plan funding from SEAI of between 10 and 25,000 euro, and we as mentors help communities to do that. If successful, you would then appoint an Energy Master Plan consultant. You further involve your community in the EMP through energy audits or a review of the renewable resources in your locality. From that plan, you identify a range of energy saving opportunities, and then you present the EMP to your community. And then you're moving into the do stage, where that community is somewhat bought into that energy master plan, and they want to start doing projects. So that's where you would explore funding opportunities to help implement the EMP, and then obviously you would kickstart your project. And I just have a link there to more information about the SEC network and the community. So with that, I am now going to stop sharing my screen. And Lisa.
Thanks, Stevie. And firstly, thank you for the invitation to speak today about the smart metering programme, and to give a bit of a flavour of the legislative and policy basis for the programme, to set out the policy approach I suppose CRU and Ireland as the member state has taken. I'll give you a little bit of an overview on how we're rolling out smart meters, but I'll leave most of that to Eoghan, as ESBN are responsible for deployment. And I'll touch on some of the deliverables as well. And I suppose the whole reason we're doing this, to enable smart services to be delivered to customers and to get customers more engaged in the energy transition. So my first slide here is just to give you a flavour of the CRU, who we are and what we do. So the CRU, we're the independent energy and water regulator in Ireland, and we've a wide range of economic, customer protection and safety responsibilities for energy and water. So our role is quite varied, but our vision is consistent, and we're focused on making sure energy is supplied safely, that we're looking at sustainable, reliable and efficient future for energy and water, that we empower and protect customers, and we make sure that they're paying reasonable prices. And we want to move towards a secure, low carbon energy future, and that's really what CRU as an organisation is focused on. And I suppose the smart metering programme is a key enabler for that. So just to give a sense, the legislative basis, and Stevie did a really good job there of setting out the policy hierarchy and how it works from a European perspective down to a local level. But just to give a sense of where the smart metering programme has its footing. So it's a national investment programme. It's of strategic national importance for Ireland. The programme was established by the CRU, and apologies, I didn't update this slide, the Department for Environment, Communications and Climate, so that should be DECC at this stage, following the recent rebranding of the department. The programme is a key element of the low carbon energy future plan that the department produced a couple of years ago. It's also a core element of the climate action plan that Stevie had mentioned from 2019, which is being updated at the moment actually. And it's being updated to reflect, I suppose, the clean energy package, which I've mentioned here, but also the Green Deal and other new policies that have come out in the area. And that will set new actions and targets for us all to work towards over the next couple of years. The smart metering programme, it's a multi-stakeholder project, and it's focused on the deployment of upgraded meters to every home in the country initially. And the purpose of upgrading those meters is to enable the delivery of smart services, but also to support how would you say it, smarter network operation. So we will have more active management of the network. We'll be able to read meters remotely, and it'll improve the general service available to customers. So it'll facilitate new projects and services like time of use tariffs, smart pay-as-you-go services where a secondary meter may not be required. And it'll also facilitate microgeneration by the end of the phases, and I'll just set out what those are in a minute. I suppose the key focus here is to empower customers to enable them make more informed decisions about their energy consumption. And we do that by providing, near real-time information, and it'll reduce the need, as I said, for in-person reading of meters, but also it'll reduce the need for estimation of bills. So that'll make it easier for customers to manage their energy expenditure a little bit better. So then just the clean energy package. The clean energy package was published last year. It sets out 8 different legislative acts that will help us shape the energy union. And it also seeks to fulfill some of the commitments in the Paris Agreement. So really sets out the roadmap for the energy transition over the next decade or so. I suppose the key element for consumers, the key directives, for consumers would be the Electricity Directive and the Renewables Directive. So they have a wide range of provisions in them, but an awful lot of what's in them is targeted towards getting more active consumer engagement in the energy market. So they're really core to what we're going to be focusing on over the next few years in terms of policy development. I suppose both of them contain elements on smart metering and making sure that we can access and use the data that is collected on those meters, of course, within the bounds of all of the data protection rules we have to adhere to. But I suppose accessing that data is fundamental to improving the service for customers. And with that, we want to encourage more active engagement in the electricity markets and to increase the use of renewables, be that large-scale development or, like a meter, might enable in-home renewable generation and better management of energy in the home. So the department is progressing the transposition of those directives into Irish law, and they're working on doing that towards the end of this year and early next year. Once those directives are transposed into Irish law, they'll provide the legislative basis to facilitate a framework that will incorporate smart metering and meter data into the wider, say, energy policy framework to facilitate more active customer engagement and smarter network management, as I mentioned earlier. So it'll really allow, meters to form the bedrock, I suppose, of the energy transition, and they're a key enabler for customers. And so it's a really, really important project we're all working on at the moment. Just then on the Irish approach, so I have 2 slides here and they're a little bit backwards because the smart metering programme has been developed over a number of years, and so we set out a lot of policy, say early in the decade, but the phased approach for how we're deploying meters was agreed in 2017, and so some of this policy predates the current approach. But I suppose the CRU in 2014 would have set out the high-level design elements for the smart metering programme, and that defined the core meter design, how we wanted time of use to work, what smart pay-as-you-go should provide, and it set out the rules around energy use information. So then they were the high-level decisions. In 2015 and 16, we focused more so on the detailed design decisions, and we made a number of decisions in that regard. And from 2017 onwards, we have made a number of additional decisions around how smart services would be delivered to customers and how different elements of the programme would work. So, an interesting one there is the decision on a standard smart tariff. So this is a default time of use tariff that all energy suppliers are mandated to provide to their customers once they've received a smart meter. This tariff does not require the sharing of personal data, so it's a nice alternative to customers who might not want to share a granular level of information. We also published a decision to change the approach to how we would move customers to time of use. So in 2019, the CRU published a decision called the customer-led transition, and that allows the customer, I suppose, to take that final decision themselves as to whether they would like to try a time of use tariff or not. This decision is heavily linked to the introduction of the GDPR regulation, which required that a customer, you know, can have the final control decision on what they do with their data. And so the smart standard tariff is there as an alternative. Some of the other decisions there I won't get into because they're not that they're heavily technical actually. But over the next couple of years, we're going to make more defined decisions around smart pay as you go and how that customer journey will work. And we're going to look a bit more closely at things like how often would a customer receive a top-up message? How will that information be displayed to them? So will the supplier provide an app, for example, for a customer on a pay-as-you-go product, or will it be something else? So there's a lot of work to be done in that space over the next couple of years as well. So then the phased approach that I mentioned earlier. So in 2017, this National Smart Metering Programme. And the programme is to be developed or is to be delivered in a phased way. And my next slide will show you at a high level some of the deliverables in each phase, and Eoghan will give you a bit more detail on what they are. But it's to be delivered on a phased basis by ESB Networks in cooperation with ourselves, with the Department of Energy, the SEAI, and all of the electricity supply companies. The CRU does maintain an oversight role for the deployment programme, and we would also lead on the development of customer policy. So we're very busy working on it at the moment. In the initial phases of the programme, we'll see a transformation of the retail market, you know, by ensuring that suppliers provide customers with access to new tariffs and services. We want to improve the information being given to customers, and we want to increase the accuracy of bills to remove that estimated element from that. And I suppose that fits in quite nicely with the CRU's legislative remit to protect customers and ensure you're paying a fair and reasonable price. In terms of deployment, it commenced last October with all of meters in the programme to be replaced by 2024 over 3 phases. And I know Eoghan will give you an update as well on the meter deployment this year, which is going very well. I suppose I've just kind of put in that graphic there. It kind of gives you the message at a glance. So what we're trying to do is improve customer choice, improve customer control, and drive innovation in the market. And those are the key benefits we would see from the smart metering programme. And then just to touch on the deliverables. So by the end of this year, the target is to have 250,000 meters deployed. Those meters will record import and export data. Meters will be read remotely. I hope you can still hear me. Yep. Sorry, hang on now. Just had a. Okay, sorry, my screen did something funny, but if you're nodding at me, so I presume you can still hear me, so I'll keep going. Meters will be read remotely. We'll also facilitate the introduction of time of use tariffs. And then phase 2, you'll see an increase in meter deployment numbers and the introduction of smart pay-as-you-go services. And finally, in phase 3, when we bring the deployment to a conclusion and we introduce those final smart services to the market, we'll see near real-time energy usage information. We'll see a system-wide solution for microgeneration. We'll also see gas smart metering being switched on. And what that will mean is that your gas meter will have a smart functionality to it as well. So you'll be able to get more information on your gas consumption. And that is my last slide. So I know I gave a couple of hints as to what Eoghan is going to update us on. And without further ado, I'll hand over to him.
Okay, sorry, I can't see those either. Having a bit of a nightmare techie day here, but I have the slides here myself. So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for the invite to chat at this webinar. Eoghan Barrett is my name, and I manage the National Smart Meter Programme in ESB Networks. So just we go on to the first slide there. Just what exactly is the National Smart Metering Programme? So it's a major meter replacement programme, which is a key element of the National Climate Action Plan. And it's really supporting the national move to a low carbon electricity network. I suppose as we go through the programme, we're going to deliver benefits to consumers. And Lisa mentioned there around choice. And so consumers will be able to access information they need for more informed choices. In terms of the environment, we benefit because we encourage energy efficiency and we support the increase in use of renewable power into the electricity system. And we also do that at different levels within the electricity network as well. And then economy benefits because we'll end up hopefully using energy at different times of the day, manage the energy flows at high demand times more efficiently, and also the transition to that low carbon network and a carbon network where low carbon network where distributed generation is brought in at all points, and that helps us to do that in a much more cost effective way. So I suppose if you just go on to the next slide, there kind of the 5 objectives as we see it of the program then would be to encourage energy efficiency and facilitate peak load management. And I suppose kind of when you look at those two, you go back to a trial, the smart metering trial that was done back now, I think it was 2010, when there were 10,000 customers involved in that trial. And so, some of the things that kind of achieved the best trial or outcomes of that trial were that customers, when they have information about their energy usage, actually they kind of are more careful about the energy used. So the sample size would have seen a 3% reduction in overall energy demand. And also with stimulus and kind of pricing, people actually shifted load out of the peak periods as well. So we saw a movement of up to 8% of load out of the peak for that group as well. And as we move forward, then renewables and microgeneration have become much more prevalent on the network, and there's a lot more. There are bigger plans for renewables and microgeneration. So again, smart metering is an enabler for that technology. And then while ESB Networks is a network provider and it's not involved in the retail space, it does the features of smart metering will help to enhance competition, improve customer services, and bring in new products. And as Lisa mentioned earlier on, we're encourage innovation in the retail space. And I think from early indications there's a lot of innovation going on in that space. And second, the last benefit obviously is from a network point of view, from an ESB Networks point of view, there are a lot of efficiencies that we can gain through remotely managing meters as well. And also in time, when the clean energy package is transposed, we'll be able to use the data to plan network better and to manage network better as well. So lots of benefits there and lots of reasons why we would do a program. And I suppose the next question then is, how do we deliver that? So if we move on to the next slide, what we see is this is a 3-phase project or program running to the end of 2024, and phase 1 is coming to a conclusion. So phase 1 was all about being able to building the capability to install smart meters, and that's no mean achievement. And what you're looking at is effectively building an organisation or a new organisation that will be able to deliver meter exchanges at a rate of 2,000 a day at its peak. So it was putting that organisation in place, getting the meters in place, getting the meters connected, all the technology that's required with that. Sorry, if you wouldn't mind filling out the slider, I think it's animated, but it might be easier if we just fill it all the way out. So from a functionality point of view, phase 1 is effectively all about being able to record, collect and process smart metering data and being able to integrate that in with the existing retail market processes to allow the launch of smart services in early 2021. And for phase 2 then is all about, the other thing is we're focusing on general domestic 24-hour customers in phases 1 and 2. You may ask why we're just focusing on them. Well, it's the biggest cohort of customers. So of the 2.3 million meters out there, 1.8 million of them are general domestic customers. There's about 300,000 what we call day and night meters, and then you've smaller numbers in in the other categories. So phase 2 is again focusing on it's 1 million meters. It's 500,000 meters a year. As I said earlier, that's about 2,000 meters a day. We would also be moving then at the end of phase 2 to be able to deliver a smart prepayment service. So I don't know if people are aware, but if you want to get a lifestyle prepayment meter at the moment from a supply company, it involves the supply company putting another meter in downstream with the ESB Networks meter. And it would be envisaged that by the end of 2022, that would no longer be required, that the smart meter would also act as a prepayment meter. And now that means enabling the remote switching of that of those meters, and obviously from a cyber point of view, that's a major challenge there. So key component of that would be that we've an acceptable cyber solution that protects the metering and the network. Phase 3 then is again is the remaining meter categories, and we would see them happening in 23 and 24. And then the big thing that we start doing with the meter then is we start creating the in-home channel. And the in-home channel is what allows the meter to communicate with other devices. And I suppose the key one there would be the in-home display, and whether that follows the traditional fridge magnet type approach, or whether innovation takes us into integration with things like Google or Nest or Alexas or things like that. That will emerge over the next number of years. The meters will also be capable then of connecting to gas meters as well, and collecting and managing gas meters if required. And Gas Network Ireland are currently doing a review as to what they want to do there in terms of their approach to smart metering. But the electricity meter would be able to be used as a bridge. And the reason for that is gas meters would have to operate on a battery. They can't put a live power source next to them for safety purposes. And you need a battery that will last, that will last as long as the meter will itself. The other thing that's happening then is we start remotely reading and managing the meters, and that happens. We're already doing an element of that, but from the new year we'll be remotely reading the meters as well. So, as Lisa said, like the advantage of being able to remotely read a meter is that we would significantly reduce the number of estimates that are used in the bidding process, which then that makes the billing, there's no bill shocks or bill surprises for customers from estimates. So where we are, our first meter was installed in West Cork and in Portlaoise in September of 2019. And today we have 215,000 meters installed. We'd expect to get somewhere between 225 and 230,000 meters installed by the end of the year. And I suppose, well, the original target was for 250,000 meters. There were 7 weeks earlier, around March, April, and May, where due to the COVID restrictions, we were unable to install meters. So I think to get to that number is a really good achievement given the conditions we've been operating in for probably the last 9-10 months. I'll go into that in a bit more detail in a later slide. So if you want to move on then to the next slide. So the next slide is just setting out how the smart meter will work in an Irish context. So what you have are basically the meter is installed in the premises, and it connects to what's called a head-end system over a 2G network. And so basically meters come with a SIM card soldered into the meter. We operate currently over a 2G network that's supplied by 3 Ireland. That's a private network. It's a secure network, and only SIMs that are recognised are allowed onto that network. That then the data or the meter connects to over the 2G network into what's called a head-end system that sits in a data center, and that's effectively the piece of software that issues and takes instructions from the meter. Meter data that's collected off the meters is transferred to a meter data management system. And that's where the processing of the data goes. So that's where the validation, that's where the if there are estimates needed, and it's preparing data to be passed on to onto the supply company. So basically, data gets passed into our IT systems, our customer systems, and then passed over to the supply companies who deliver services back to the customer. So you'll see two broad categories down at the bottom of the slide there. So the AMI, or the advanced metering infrastructure, is what replaces the kind of traditional meter that hangs on the wall that's manually read. Excuse me. So when we speak about an AMI, what we mean is the meter comms network from which it operates, the head-end system, and the meter data management system. There's a couple of questions there that I'll try and address as I go through this. So the meter communicates when it has data, and so it communicates. It's set to wake every 2 hours and send data up. So now at the moment, the meter will send a register at midnight. So that's one reading at midnight. So it will wake every 2 hours, and will if it has an alert or an event on the meter, it'll also send that back up to us. So an alert or an event could be that the temperature has gone over a certain level. It could be that somebody has taken the covers off the meter, which would indicate maybe a possible tampering event, things like that. When customers are looking, the other thing is the meter is recording data at a 30-minute interval. So when customers when they opt in for a service that requires that level of data, the meter will send that back up to every 2 hours. So over the day, it'll send us up the data every 2 hours. The meter itself conforms with all international standards. So there's a number of questions there around EMS. So in terms of we don't set standards, ESB networks don't set standards for EMS or any of that. And that's all set internationally and nationally, and all the meters conform to those standards. Interestingly, I had my meter. The guys were down testing my meter, or using my meter to sort of test that, and the guy had to actually recalibrate the meter down to the lowest point, or the device to the lowest point, even to pick up EMS coming off it. So it's a low emitting device. I just want to see if there's any other questions there in that kind of broad area. Sorry, there's a question there about the spec. The meter we're using is a Camstrup smart meter. I can send on the details, the exact model number. And actually, if you want to go up to our website on smartmeters.ie, ESBnetworks.ie, /smart metering, there's an awful lot of information there around data, and our DPIA is published up there, and also we have a lot of information around the health and safety questions that are there as well. So we might move on to the next slide then, which is more around the customer journey. So what can a customer expect in the next when we come to kind of when we come to replace the meter. So I suppose when we go through new areas, the strategy is that we roll out on a regional basis. So we use what are called planner groups in ESB networks to plan our work. We have 34 planner groups. They're geographically based. And so what we'll be doing is we'll operate in a number of planner groups, and I'll go into that in a bit more detail. But basically, the rollout is geographically dispersed. So in advance of going into a location, we will run an awareness campaign. So that's basically, with our website, but we also have social media, which targets into the local geographical areas. We speak with the kind of local advocacy groups and political people as well, in terms of just making sure they understand what's going on, understand that where we would be operating, and if they're getting questions, that they understand what's happening. We also have a local engagement campaign then. So again, that's local politicians, local interest groups, And then we use local print, local radio, and social media, again, locally, in terms of trying to raise awareness. And the goal there is to make sure that when we send our first letter, that people have heard or are expecting that something is going to happen. And so as part of the engagement, then we send ESB Networks will send a letter to any customer whose meter is about to be replaced. And we've about 350,000 of those meters, or of those letters, have now been issued. And those letters are, in that letter, we will also say who is going to replace the meter. So there's obviously a huge amount of work to be done here. So we've employed some deployment contractors to help us to deliver this program. So it'll be a combination of ESB Networks technicians and deployment contractors that will be delivering the meter exchanges. We'll indicate to the customer which organisation is going to undertake the meter replacement in letter 1. Letter 2 then is issued by that organisation who are going to do the replacement, and setting out really more around how to make contact with the organisation and how to arrange an appointment. We'll also include in that letter COVID-19 information around the protections that we have to make sure that not only is the customer safe, but our staff and our contractors are also safe while the exchange is being made. After the second letter, we will make a number of attempts to contact the customer, and if the customer doesn't contact us, we'll phone, we'll knock on, we'll write again, we'll SMS where we have, we'll email where we have, and most of the time we get an appointment. We don't always need an appointment. If the meter's outdoors and it's accessible, we can go and replace the meter. Obviously, we'll knock on the door before we do that, and the replacement. On the day of the installation or the replacement, the installer will make a call to say that they're on the way and explain what our COVID precautions are, and make sure that the customer is still comfortable for the appointment to go ahead on the day. Obviously, we replace the meter. We replaced the meter. While we're at the meter point, we'll also do a safety check on the meter, so on the environment. So, for example, on outdoor meters, a lot of time we find that the doors have been damaged, or we find that the backboards have been damaged over the years with water ingress or whatever. So we'll do a safety check, and any of that kind of safety remedial work that needs to be done, we'll carry that out as well at the same time. A typical exchange takes somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes, and then if the remedial works are required, that's probably another 30 to 35 minutes. So the max time that a meter will be to replace a meter will be 90 minutes. And obviously that does mean an outage for the customer. We're obviously working with live electricity, so from a safety point of view, we do have to make it or disconnect the premises. When we're finished the work, then we leave an explanatory booklet behind. Sometimes in COVID, we were actually mailing those separately after the installation. Once we've done the meter replacement, we do some follow-up works. We obviously do audits on those, so we will come back and we will audit some of the work to make sure that the work has been done to quality, and that the quality standards are high. We also check that as well, because as part of the kind of installer process, the installer will take photographs as they go along. We've built an artificial intelligence program that checks the quality of the work based on those photographs. But we do send people in to have a look as well. A small number, but it's just both post-install audits are done. Subsequently then, if the customer has a problem, they can ring ESB Networks if there's a problem with the meter install later on or after they're finished. There haven't been, thankfully, too many of those. It's a very, very small number, a handful of them, but that's not to say they haven't been there, and that's why it is really important from our point of view that those quality checks are done and done regularly. Customers can, and we have rescheduled appointments if they can't. And certainly, what we found in the COVID kind of period is a lot of people working from home, and also people self-isolating or people just protecting themselves, cocooning. So it's all very understandable, and we're very happy to kind of reschedule the appointments and come back when necessary. And we also survey post installation as well. Again, that we get a third party Red Sea to survey customers to understand their experience and to make sure again that they had a good experience. Just moving on to the next slide there, just a quick update on what we do in terms of COVID-19. Only in the last 2 months have we gone back replacing indoors meters indoors. And I suppose you may ask, why is that? Well, we wanted to make sure that when we were indoors, that we were a safe environment. So I suppose what we have there really is like kind of 4 kind of elements to our response, if you want, to COVID. One is we create a work exclusion zone around the meter, so we actually kind of cordon off where possible. And that's not always possible. Certainly in some indoor situations, the meters are quite tight, or the space around the meter is quite tight. But where possible, work exclusion zones are created. We also are installers where person protected equipment, and there's also increased sanitization. So we sanitize hands before and after exchanges. We sanitize the meter space, and we also sanitize equipment between exchanges as well. And then we try to reduce contact. So again, installers will call customers in advance, and we ask customers to sort of stand back while we're doing the work. I know my mother and father had their meter there installed there recently, and the installer managed to make them sit in the room and in the sitting room rather than come out and look at them. So that's kind of where you are in terms of just making sure that people aren't in the vicinity. Just moving on to the next. Sorry, just to give you some kind of stats. Yesterday we installed 1,400 meters. 60% of those meters yesterday were indoors, 40 outdoors, and we had four requests for deferral when people called to the door. So that's just, and we monitor that on a daily basis, and that's kind of consistent with the response since the COVID restrictions were brought in. Just moving on then to the deployments and kind of progress nationally. So we've employed 3 deployment contractors, and I suppose one of the reasons for that is to give us geographical distribution. And so, we want to make sure that we're installing, we're not just focusing on one part of the country. We want to try and spread these meters out across the country as we go. So we're working with 3 companies, and we've broken our kind of deployment up into a northern geography, an eastern geography, and a southern geography. So in the northern geography, we're working with a company called MDE. They're based out of Monaghan. They're focusing in around what's called the Drogheda Planner Group at the moment. So that's kind of the sort of 2 major towns there will be Drogheda and Navan, and that's where they're operating at the minute. In the eastern geography, we're working with a company called KN, and they're kind of working in what's Port Leash. So the Port Leash Planner Group is the county of Leash, portions of Kildare, and a small portion of Wicklow, and an even smaller portion of Carlow. And then they're working on the south side of Dublin at the moment. And then down in the southern geography, we're working in the Bandon Planner Group. So that's kind of the part of West Cork that's closer to the city. You've got towns there like Bandon, Macroom, Kinsale, Carrigaline, and then you've got the Cork City. So we're on the south side of the Cork City at the moment. Plans for 2021 would be in the northern part of the country. We hope to start installing meters in Sligo and radiating out from Sligo early next year. So in a couple of weeks' time, basically. And also we'll move from Drogheda up towards Dundalk. In the sort of the southern, in the eastern geography, we're going to move into Dublin Central and the north side of Dublin, and also we'll start moving into kind of south of Portlaoise, so we're moving down towards Kilkenny. And then in the southern geography, we're hoping to open the centre in Limerick, and kind of start focusing, radiating out from Limerick as well. while also kind of building on out from Cork as well. So just some stats, just so you're kind of interested. So these slides were cut there towards the in the last week. So over 200,000 meters have now been installed. Over 20,000 of those meters are now being installed as BA business as usual. So what do we mean by that? That means any new connections for a general domestic 24-hour meter, or any meter that we have to replace as a result of a fault or a college, they're all being replaced, or smart meters now being used in those instances. So over 20,000 meters have been installed using that method during the year. In terms of installs, just to give you kind of a sense of when we started back in September of 2019, we did 29 in the first day, and in September we were doing 1,500 a day. Now the numbers will fluctuate when we don't work when it's dark, so the installers have to finish earlier in the winter time. But we're still getting yesterday, as I say, 1,400 meters done. Just to give you kind of a breakdown where we are. So also about over 40,000 of the meters replaced have been indoor, and just under 150,000 are outdoor. The bias there is we had to suspend indoor installs as a result of COVID, and only went back doing indoor installations or meter replacements just in October, while we were installing through the summer outdoors. So, but there's a big focus now on doing indoor meters at the moment. Also, the split at the moment in terms of urban, rural, and urban means towns as well. It's not just all around Dublin or in the city and Cork. It's those rural towns as well are included in the urban count. But again, just 35,000 rural and over 150,000 urbans. And then in terms of installers, so on top of our NTs, our own ESB NTs, who do a lot of other work on the network, not just meter replacements, we now have over 300 deployment contractors trained and working on meters. That's something we've had to work with over through COVID in terms of training people. We've had to adjust our training centre to create social distance and observations, so we can monitor what people are doing. And also a lot of our training is now delivered online. I suppose the other thing is the kind of the back end project team has been remotely working as well since last March. So that's the last 10 months. Effectively, we haven't been in an office. We've been operating as a remote project. So just to give you a sense of scale, that's a project team of over 200 people, including the IT elements. So just in summary then, look, we've started the meter replacements. It'll result in 2.4 million meters being upgraded to modern digital technologies. These are new generation meters that have been rolled out across Europe and internationally. There'll be over 700 million smart meters installed worldwide at the end of this year. Whereas in Ireland, we'll have 2.3, 2.4, depending on new connections, homes installed, farms, and business premises. And I suppose, again, just to repeat, maybe it's supporting the migration to a low carbon electricity network. And that brings benefits, as I said earlier, to the environment, to the consumer, and to the economy. And you can see there's more information if you just go to our website. Okay, so thank you. I'll just pass you back to Stevie and Paul.
Great. Paul, you can hear me there, yeah?
Yep.
Yeah. Eoghan, thanks very much. That was very comprehensive going through. It's interesting to see how much progress has been made, especially with COVID happening and everything. So I'll go through a couple of the questions. We'll try not to keep people too long. We might ask questions for the next 5-10 minutes, and then we'll bring it to a close. But just some of the questions that we're getting. So there's one there about, and I suppose it's about, you spoke there, Eoghan, about that customer journey and how you're trying to engage with people. Is there a role there for SECs, I suppose, to help ESB networks engage with their communities in preparing for those meter installs in areas. Obviously, you have a method that you've outlined there about how ESB Networks is doing it, but I suppose SECs are already very knowledgeable now about energy consumption because they've been active now for a number of years, and they probably want to take part in something that has to do with saving energy in their locality. So potentially, would there be a role there for SECs as part of the rollout over the coming years?
Yeah, so I suppose, look, when pre-COVID, what we were doing was part of the local campaigns. We were actually going into locations, physically going to locations. So again, if the local groups are looking to run sessions or whatever, we're happy to support them and attend those. It's interesting if it's webinar or physical. Hopefully in time we'll be able to do it physically again. But certainly, look, we're happy to kind of help it would help us in terms of the local engagement, and if people want to kind of get involved with us, we're happy to support them as well.
Okay, thanks. It would be great to maybe check in 6 months or a year's time to see sort of the targets and the progress at that point, and to see have SECs engaged. So we might come back to you on that.
Stevie, could I just do a bit of a shout out for the CRU there, if you don't mind, because it's great to have direct access to the SEC network at the moment. So the CRU, there is a team in the CRU who are looking at the opportunities in the clean energy package. And, you know, there's some core elements there around energy communities and active customers. And like you say, this network will have an awful lot of knowledge and interest in getting involved at a local level in something to do with energy, either efficiency or generation or whatever it is. So just in that context, we had published a call for evidence in August this year, looking for ideas around how energy communities should be facilitated in future, and also how active consumers should be treated from a policy perspective, and that always sets the roadmap for everybody. So I know we're going to go out again early next year with the consultation, so we'll have set out some of our ideas there on how, you know, energy communities could interact, for example, at a local level in the energy market, and how active consumers might get involved. And I would just encourage this network to keep an eye out on our website. You can subscribe and get an update when things are published. And it'd be great to get some sort of sense of feedback or ideas from this group into that consultation, because, you know, there's no point developing policy in isolation if it's not getting down to the people you actually want to get involved. So I just take this opportunity to shout out at this stage. Thanks.
That's great, Lisa. Thanks. And yeah, I saw that consultation coming out there a while ago through the clean energy package, and absolutely, and enabling SECs to take part in that consultation is definitely something that we need to do better, I suppose. So it's good to see that that's been looked at. And just sticking with yourself and Lisa, a really good question here. Around when will users get access to their own live electrical, gas and water use. So I suppose in a simple way, when will I be able to open up an app on my phone and see how much electricity, gas and water I'm using? Is there a target date for that to take place?
Yeah, well, I suppose that very much, well, it depends on two things. What meter infrastructure do you have in your home, and who's your supplier? And that means gas, electricity, and you can only have one water supplier. And you mightn't have a water meter, so you probably won't get that level of individual consumption for water anytime soon, just because the measurement infrastructure isn't there, and it's not the way you will be charged. And when I say charge, I don't mean to panic anyone, but earlier this year, the CRU actually introduced an allowance called the excessive usage charge. And it's where they set an allowance every year for customers to use, say, X number of meters of or X number of litres of water without incurring a charge. But if you go over that limit, you could be liable for a charge. And there's more information on our website on that. And I think it's 1% of the population are assumed to be over that limit. So nobody should panic about it. But for gas and electricity, So if you get a smart meter in your home, it should be able to communicate with the back-end market system, and your supplier, depending on what service they're offering to you, might have an app that gives you up-to-date information on what you're doing. Now, the GDPR element comes in here. You as a consumer have to choose to share that information from your meter. It'll have to go up into the ESBN backend system and then out to your supplier, and how the supplier presents it to you is up to them. Similarly, on the gas side, you'll have seen phase 3 is looking at gas smart metering. So that's when the gas infrastructure will start to provide more information. The thing about gas is it's very much seasonal, your consumption. So even if you provide someone with an awful lot more information about what they're consuming gas-wise, it may not drive the same behavioural change. So the benefit of investing in that metering infrastructure is much lower than electricity, where you might be able to, for example, turn your washing machine on in the evening rather than in the evening peak, or you might be able to change your behaviour to drive a saving or a better environmental benefit. So gas during phase 3, so 2024, electricity, once you get your smart meter, it's comms are enabled and you've agreed to share that information. The ability to consume information in a particular way depends on your energy supplier. So electricity consumer gas by phase 3, so 2024, and water not anytime soon.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks for that, Lisa. Owen, back over to yourself. You probably covered this, but just a question there. Is there a charge to customers to have these meters in their homes? There's obviously no charge for whatever contract you have to install the meter, but there's obviously a charge in our electricity bills. You might just explain how the cost will be recovered, please.
So yeah, so you're right. So there's no direct charge for meter replacement, and it's included in the network services or the network system operation charges. So that's part of the 5-year price review with ESB networks, and so it's factored into the price already, basically. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, sorry, that's perfect. Yeah, that's great. And then there's just a quick question here. I apologize, you've already answered it. The RES stands for the Renewable Electricity Support Scheme. And then just a query then around how the smart meter will, I suppose, enable real-time monitoring of energy use, but then it's down to the products that are available from possibly electricity suppliers to enable that information that you're monitoring to inform what you're actually going to do with your energy use, to switch on or off your dishwasher or your washing machine. So that's that there. So it's just going through some more of these questions now. Yeah, and then question then, I suppose, again for Owen, can the smart meter be accessed remotely using an app by the user? So if I'm in the office in IT Sligo and I want to know how much electricity consumption has been used in my house, will I be able to log on to an app? And again, that's probably something that the electricity supplier will provide. But Owen, do you want to try and answer that, please?
Yeah, so so you're correct. Like, so the provision of sort of customer data, and certainly linked to price, is something that the supply companies will facilitate. The creation of the in-home channel and the in-home display is something that's targeted to the end of the programme. And I suppose that's as a backstop, and allows time for innovation and allows for the other market players to innovate and come up with other products. But if they don't, there is a backstop that ESB networks will provide an in-home display at the end of 2024.
Okay, thanks. And then Lisa, we might make this the last question. So we've heard about microgeneration and the idea that, for example, if you have solar PV installed on your roof, and if you're meeting the electricity demand of your house and you've got some spare capacity, that you can spill that back onto the grid, which is the term used. And currently, if you do that, there's no feed-in tariff, or there's no support or payment to a customer for that to happen. So can you give us an indication of when that might happen or how that process will work, and how smart meters will be part of that?
Sure. So yeah, so the microgeneration support has been flagged for the last 12-18 months anyway. So the climate action plan includes an action 30 for the department to explore options to introduce microgeneration support by June 2021 actually. And so it's very much a department-led initiative at the moment, okay? But what is happening on the ground is CRU is looking at how the market would settle any sort of microgeneration, for example. So if you think about what happens in your home at the moment, you import from the grid and you use it in your house. And now you're talking about importing from the grid, potentially generating to meet your own consumption and maybe exporting some of it. And there's an exercise there to be done in understanding what your import and your export profile is and how are they netted off. So do you get paid for the excess export or whatever it is? So there's that piece CRU is looking at. The department is trying to figure out at the moment whether it would be something a la the support schemes we're used to. So I saw Orla earlier mentioned a feed-in tariff. So that's one option being explored. That would have to be supported by the citizen through the PSO levy, which again is a government initiative that appears on your bill. Or could you look at, for example, mandating the supplier pay the tariff? So that's being considered at the moment. So what is happening is the department is developing a consultation paper on the microgeneration support scheme. It's to be published, we hope, by the end of this year. It should set out options for support and a preferred option, and then a decision will be clarified early next year, probably by Q2. But that support scheme is supposed to be available by June, and that's where it's at the moment. So the meter would be able to provide information on what your export is, but it'll very much be the amount of money, let's say, or the support approach that a customer can benefit from is yet to be defined by the department, but work is ongoing on it.
Lisa, I might just add one other thing onto that, if you wouldn't mind. Yeah. There's a question there around access to metering. So any customer that has registered an NC6 form with ESB Networks, we will install a smart meter where possible for those customers. And any customer that has microgen installed and use a day and night meter, if they want to get a meter installed, a smart meter installed, they need to contact their supply company, who will organise with us to do that.
Okay, thanks. Okay, guys, just one last question. And I'm being selfish here because someone else has asked it, but I'm being selfish because it's of interest to me as well in the project I'm working on, and it's about the current day-night meter. So obviously, some people use night storage heaters, so they have a dual rate tariff already on their meter. So that, if I'm correct on that, will continue. And what will happen with the smart meter, it will actually incorporate a third tariff possibly in 2024. Is that correct?
Yes. So just to be clear, so yeah, so the smart meter is set up with to record. So if you want the day in the smart world, so it's based on on allowing ensuring that everybody has access to a basic smart tariff, right? So the meter will record across 3 time periods. It'll record what's called a peak period, which is from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. A night period, which is from 2300 to 0800, and then a day period, which is the 0800 to 2300, excluding the peak period. So customers will still be able to get the equivalent of a day and night. It'll effectively be three registers rather than 2. But that will allow customers to get access to it. All customers, even if the meter has to be manually read, all customers will have access to that basic time of use or standard tariff, which I believe the supply companies have to make available from early next year as well.
From early next year. Okay, very good. Okay, look, we're 20 minutes past 3. We were a little bit late starting. We've allowed a bit of time, conscious that people have the rest of their day ahead of them. So we might call it to a close there. Eoghan and Lisa, I might follow up with you with some of the questions we're getting there. Yep. And we might send out a couple of answers to the people who've joined us today. And again, we're going to try and make the recording and presentations available either directly to the participants or through the SEAI SEC newsletter. So again, Orla, thank you very much for coming up with the idea for running this webinar and finding Lisa and Eoghan. And then Lisa and Eoghan, thank you very much for going through all that information. It's good to see that it's the program has installed because of COVID, that it's ongoing, and it's exciting to see some of the services that are going to be available and what people will be able to do with more information at their fingertips. And Paul, thanks very much for the tech support during the call. Okay, so thanks very much, folks. We're going to end it there, and we'll hopefully run another webinar on a different topic in a number of weeks' time. Okay, thanks very much. Take care.
Thanks.